My name's Erin Holliday. I'm the Executive Director of Arkansans for the Arts, and welcome to Arts Advocacy Day. So this portion of the day, we've got a couple of members of our Legislative Arts Caucus here on the meeting, and it's just kind of a casual Q&A. We have some questions that we've prepared, but we definitely would like you guys in the audience to use the chat function and shoot us some questions that we can pass on to our Arts Caucus members. And so we have Representative Denise Garner and Representative Tippy McCullough here with us. So thank you guys so much. I know you just kind of scooted in right after morning budget hearings. So hopefully this will be a nice mental break from conversations.
Absolutely.
But yeah, that being said, this particular event is being co-hosted with the Arkansas Arts Council. And so Patrick's here with the Arts Council if you want to introduce yourself as well, and we can get going.
Sure. I am Patrick Ralston. I'm the director of the Arkansas Arts Council. We are let me see if I can get this right. We're an agency of the Division of Arkansas Heritage, which is, of course, part of the Arkansas Department of Parks, Heritage, and Tourism. An agency, a cabinet level agency, Department of State Government in Arkansas, state of United States on earth. And so, yeah, we are your state arts agency, and we were actually chartered created in 1967 by Governor's Proclamation, and by 1973, I think we became a full-fledged state agency under the umbrella of what became the Department of Arkansas Heritage. So. My job is mainly to promote arts and the access to the arts in Arkansas, do a lot of promotion, a lot of work with individual artists, as well as arts organizations, not only advocacy partners like Arkansans for the Arts, but also lots of nonprofit arts organizations from, everywhere from Crystal Bridges to all down to local organizations like, Emergent Arts, which is actually Erin's other gig in Hot Springs. So, yeah, we, all sizes, but we work to bring the arts to as many people in Arkansas as possible, and I've been here for 3.5 years, almost 4 years, and it's been my pleasure to be a part of that.
Actually, now I would like to get our two representatives to say a little bit about yourselves, and then the theme of today is arts means. So we've asked people around the state to talk about what arts means to them, and I think that would be a good opener. So Representative Garner, you're actually the first square on my screen. So in my head, you'll hop in first. But if you want to just tell us about your district, where you are in the state, a little bit about why you're on the Arts Caucus, and really what arts means to you.
Sure. So I am representing District 84, which is Northwest Arkansas. So I have basically East Fayetteville, kind of the suburbs of Fayetteville, and then some of rural Washington County. So I have Elkins and Goshen and Greenland and West Fork and a little bit of Springdale and a little bit of Fayetteville. So my district varies a lot. The arts have meant a lot to me for many, many years. We've been arts advocates for a long time. And the first thing personally is peace of mind. I love to paint, actually. Nothing that I will ever put on my walls, but certainly helps with some of my inner turmoil, maybe. But I love the arts, and I have personally watched Northwest Arkansas grow dramatically since the opening of the Walton Arts Center and Theater Squared, and certainly Crystal Bridges. And so the arts are such an important part of economic development, which I've seen firsthand. And then the other thing, the arts, one of my other passions is inclusion. And I've watched in a couple of the organizations that I work with folks who are very ill, with organizations for intellectual disabilities, and the arts are extremely important in bringing the community to them and expanding the inclusion because of that. So I've been involved in a lot of different arts organizations, and thrilled to be in a place where I hope we can make it easier for artists and arts organizations to make that important, both at a personal level and in a economic level, and then that cultural level. So those are the main things that I think about arts as we've advocated for the arts in my lifetime anyway.
Representative McCullough.
Yeah, sure. Probably like most people, I feel like the arts have saved my life at times, just through music and books and things like that. I represent District 33 here in Little Rock, and that is downtown up through Midtown, between I-630 and Cantrell Road, and a little bit west of Central High School also. And like I said, arts have been important to me throughout my life. I have played a little guitar and started banjo lessons a few years ago to be a true Arkansan. And as an English teacher, books have always been, of course, extremely important to me, plays, those kinds of things. And when I was growing up, I believe I could have spent all my money on music and books, and I'm kind of like that today still. But it's also been a way, as I was a teacher, English teacher for 33 years, and it's an incredible way to connect with students through music, movies, those types of things. Really can give you connections to students that often you can't get in any other ways. You kind of have to stay that cool teacher instead of the one that's, you know, way behind the times, stay up with what they're doing and everything. So I think that that's important. I mean, I believe it's, as a teacher, I know how important the arts are in education. Students are so different. They're not all academically driven. And I know that the arts play a huge role in a lot of students' lives, and helping them understand that there's a pathway for them in life through the arts, and they don't have to be the academic genius or the sports hero or anything like that. Like Denise said, I believe it's super important in economic development, employment opportunities. Here in Little Rock, in my district, you know, we have the Arkansas Arts Center. We have we have a sculpture garden downtown. We have the Rep for plays, Kaleidoscope Film Festival, the Arkansas Cinema Society. So we have a lot going on here in Little Rock. And I believe for us to draw the best talent from anywhere and to keep the people that we have here, that the culture is super important for doing those things. So I certainly believe that this is one of, I would say, my passions. And I look forward to working with all of you guys and the other entities here in Little Rock to do as much as we can to promote the arts, and through promoting the arts, support our cities and our towns.
Thank you. So for those of you, if you weren't on in the very beginning, if you have questions for either of our legislators, please use the chat function and we can ask those for you as they come in. But one of the things that I wanted to start with, it's actually a question that we'll be asking Senator Elliott and Congressman Hill later in the day, and it has to do with the creative economy. So at Arkansans for the Arts, one of the things we do is we try to pull data together about the creative economy in Arkansas. And so one of the statistics that we pulled together on our last study was that pre-pandemic, granted everything is a new normal right now, but with pre-pandemic numbers, arts and cultural production in Arkansas was valued at $2.9 billion. And that sector creates over 34,000 jobs in the state. So with the arts impacting things like, tourism, not just fine arts, we've got the arts going into everything. So how do you guys see the arts, us supporting the arts and creative so we can then further support our economy?
Well, I think, and this is one of the things Tiffany and I've talked about. I think one of the big things is that you guys have got to come to us to tell us what you need. I know that Patrick worked at BLR. You've been involved in some of the legislation and some of the aspects of doing what we do. But the main thing is that it takes the constituency, the citizens of Arkansas, to let us know what it is that you're doing or that you want to do that is limited by the current legislation. And so I think that's one thing that would be extremely helpful. I do think the caucus is helpful. Unfortunately, the caucuses don't meet as often when we're not in session, so that's a little more difficult. But I will say that one of the things I think is extremely key is that we work in partnerships, and the legislation is one of those. The government is one of those partners. I know that I get information from Arkansas Women, the Arkansas Committee for Women in the Arts, from you guys, from Arts Advocates, from Mid-America Arts Alliance. I saw Margaret on the call. Hey, Margaret. But some of those ideas, some of the ideas that the organizations are doing that we could do here, maybe that Texas is doing, or that some of the other regional states are doing, that would be helpful to know. One of the other things is that in talking to some of my constituents, a lot of times it's something fairly simple, like just changing a rule so that theater could be done outside of regional limits or something like that. So that would happen to be city, but there are a lot of things I think that are fairly simple, but we don't know it's a problem until you guys come tell us it's a problem. And I'm not really sure what the question was now that we've gone there. So
no, it's great. It's great, and that's part of the point of this particular segment, is that we want to make sure that the dialogue's going back and forth, because all of us we get into our little worlds that we're in, and we don't realize that there might be really simple solutions. We just need to open the conversation. Having the Arts Caucus is huge, and for us at Arkansans for the Arts to know that we have a direct connection to people who are who appreciate the arts and find it to be important. And so I'm surprised no one's, unless my chat just has decided not to say anything, no one has questions so far. But yeah, Patrick, I know you were thinking about some other things to ask as well. The questions that I have, what I talked about a minute ago, had to do with the creative economy and how the arts and creatives have generated $2.9 billion into the economy. And so, what can we do to continue to support arts and creatives? And I have to say, the fact that the CARES Act included those in the gig economy, those who were self-employed and nonprofit PPP program was huge. And then also, we had CARES Act funding that was specific for the arts that came through the Arkansas Arts Council. And as someone who runs an arts organization, I'm sure I can speak for several people on this meeting that were recipients and are very appreciative that the federal government and the state government prioritize the arts and nonprofits in that. So that's the most recent, success story. But if you have any other thoughts like that or specifics that you would want from us.
Erin, can I jump in real quick?
Please.
One of the things I'm really worried right now because so many, businesses are struggling, nonprofits are struggling. It's been difficult to raise money during this time, and especially with an election going on. So I'm worried about, a lot of places struggling. I also think some of the things that we're working on, such as some technology things, even broadband, just in increasing broadband, capability for people throughout the state. I think that indirectly and sometimes directly helps the arts in lots of ways. I think creating these entertainment districts have helped the arts in some ways, especially if it's around theaters or places where people would, congregate and meet and also go to those types of things. And I think one of the main things we found out during the pandemic is how important the arts are to our mental health.
Yeah.
And we've had people all over the nation and actually the world, entertainers, artists, and all types of genres come out and I think do things, be very creative in how they're reaching us. Be very generous in what they're offering up that normally we might pay quite a bit for. And I think that that's been very helpful. I know here in Little Rock on 7th Street, there's a corridor there where there have been lots of murals that have been painted. And that's been very a way for our community to connect, and a way also, once again, I think to help heal us in lots of ways, because we've had not only the pandemic, but we've had all of the civil rights issues, right? The civil rights issues. We've had that stuff and the pandemic, and there's so many things that I believe that the arts are helping us get through that would be much more difficult without that. So anyway, that's my 2 cents on that. And I'm like Denise, I need to know what you guys need. That's most helpful to us, for us to know what you need. If you have legislation that you would like put forth or worked through the process and everything, anything that you guys can teach us about this gap between, I love the arts, but what can we actually do to help the arts?
Well, and one of the first questions that came in, Margaret Keogh from Mid-America Arts Alliance was asking, here in Arkansas, how far in advance of a legislative session do you guys need to know about an issue? And that I think is important for everyone to know. We can't just necessarily jump in at the last minute if we have a great idea. So a little bit about the process and the timing would be helpful.
Yeah, I think it depends on what the legislation is. If it's a simple rule change, then it doesn't take so long. But when someone comes to me with an idea for legislation, then I generally look at the idea. I try to find out if there are states that are doing whatever it is well, and try to find what legislation is out there. We've got a couple of organizations that help us to do that nationally, so that if there's another state that's really doing a cultural, some sort of cultural project well, then maybe we could do that here. So I pull in thank you, Patrick, for your previous experience. I get BLR to do that for me. But BLR will pull in, they'll pull in legislation from other places, and then we'll take a look at that. And then I shop that piece of legislation around. So I would look at everyone who would be pro that legislation and everyone that would be con that legislation, to try to get something that we can all agree on, first of all, or that would pass in our legislature, because probably whatever I get from outside agencies, I'm going to get the same concerns inside the legislature. So Kate, that doesn't really, or Margaret asked that, I think, I don't, everything is a little bit different. I've got pieces of legislation that I've been trying to get since I started. And, it's tough to even get people to sit down with me to talk about it. And then I've got rule changes that take, I can do that in session and a week before. So it depends on what it is.
Yeah, I agree. It's all about the coalition building, who all you have to get on board.
If there's money
Usually,
involved.
usually the agencies, if there's money involved,
Well,
yeah. And
that kind of leads into
but
their,
you talk to,
Mhm.
yeah, go ahead.
well, talking about,
I was just going to say,
no, go ahead. Go ahead, go ahead.
I was just going to say, you've got to make sure the governor's office is okay. You've got to make sure that the agencies are okay. You've got to, you've got to talk to all the partners involved before pulling legislation out. It doesn't mean that if they're not okay with it, you can't go ahead and work with it. But you just have to know going in what the pros and cons are and what you're going to be arguing for and against.
Well, we had a couple of questions actually about funding. Kate Shea, one of our board members, was asking how exactly does the funding work with the Arts Council? Is it a line item budget, and how often it falls under attack? And just she referenced her background with an arts organization relying on Arts Council funding. And then Jennifer Unger from TRAC asked about the pandemic affecting Arts Council and arts funding. So those two kind of go a little bit together. Sort of what's the process and what's the future of it, do we think? So who wants to jump in?
Well, I can.
Patrick, I was going to say Patrick is going to know more about the funding.
I can give you a quick rundown on that. We don't have our own separate. We have a separate appropriation in the which is a section essentially in the larger appropriation bill for the Department of Parks, Heritage, and Tourism, and that appropriation is for federal money because we get about, I think it's about 40% of our a little 35-40% of our budget comes from the National Endowment for the Arts. We have a partnership agreement that we sign with them every year, and we get this year we got about $700,000. But the rest of our funding, which is made up of cash funds, a relatively small amount of cash funds, we get some conservation tax, 1/8 cent conservation tax, and then we get some general revenue, and that is all allocated to us through the Secretary's office of the Department of Parks, Heritage, and Tourism now. So, in effect, budgeting decisions for the agencies under the umbrella of that department are all made at the cabinet level. And I can tell you that our funding has been fairly flat for the last few years. I mean, given some of the challenges, that's actually a good, I mean, we're doing better than a lot of people are. We have a governor that has at least committed to maintaining the arts, and certainly Governor Hutchinson has been supportive of our programs. Secretary Hurst has, and we've had, like I say, consistent funding. We have the first week that the day that I started was the day right after the inauguration of Donald Trump as president, and the Trump administration submitted a budget that eliminated the National Endowment for the Arts and the National Endowment for the Humanities. So that has been the greatest challenge that I have seen out there. But to the credit of Congress, they certainly reminded, and at that time it was a Republican House and Senate, and they quickly reminded state arts agencies like ours that your friends are still your friends, and their commitment to the arts has continued. In fact, they actually raised the budget. They have, over the last 3 years, have raised the NEA's budget at a regular about, I think it's gone up about 10, 15,000, excuse me, 10, 15 million from where it was in 2017. So, you know, the commitment to the arts is strong congressionally. We don't come under fire. And knock on wood, I have not had any. We haven't really had any move on our budget here statewide, and in some sense, that's probably because we are again part of a larger department. But you know, certainly we do get. You know, there are challenges. We do have unfunded. You know, there is legislation out there that allows us to do things but is unfunded, and the arts district legislation that passed in 2011 is a good example of that. And that's something that we have not been able to fund or staff. But you know, we do have we are a pretty well. I have to say that we are a pretty well liked agency. That happens when you give out money. I don't feel that we are in jeopardy budget-wise. We may have to shift some of our budget to conservation tax, more to conservation tax, because general revenue is going to take a hit this year, or at least, you know, I'm prepared for that. But overall, I have to say that we are, you know, since I've been here, I've received a lot of support from at least well wishes, at least from my friends in the legislature and in the executive branch. So I can't complain about that.
Well, do you guys have, because the second part of the question, and I don't know, I mean, no one can see the future, but do any of you have any inclination as to how the pandemic may impact, you know, state funding for the arts? I know it's, you know, we're talking about people whose, you know, health and lives are at risk when we're talking about the pandemic. And so I don't know if you guys have any insight, especially now that you're having budget conversations. Are things going to shift because priorities in the state might be shifting?
I think they have to, and as a nurse, I will say that we can't do anything until we take care of the pandemic. We have got to get more testing and or contact tracing. We've got to get the epidemic under control before we can move on. But I do think that what's happened during the pandemic is that it's highlighted some of the issues that we have in our economic goals and in our infrastructure, some of our structural issues, racial issues, economic disparities, all of those kinds of things that's highlighted. And, you know, I dream about, I really think the arts are the answer to a lot of the problems that we're dealing with. I think that, boy, if we could get a Delta cultural region where we've talked about this some, Patrick's been on some of those conversations, and Margaret, through Mid-America, but working with Louisiana for a jazz highway, or pulling from internally as opposed to asking organizations or manufacturing to come to Arkansas. I think we have an opportunity to build from within, and I don't think we do that enough. And I'm so thankful for you guys and for the organizations, for the Arts Council and for Mid-America and some of the organizations that are helping to train our artists in business management and some of those kinds of things. But I do think that we have an opportunity to for urban revitalization, for rural development, diversity and education and diversity, and then to pull from the cultural region, or the cultural history in some of our regions, I think would just be phenomenal. I think we could solve a lot of Arkansas's problems if we would just reimagine what Arkansas looks like and make sure that the arts are a big part of that.
Yeah, I'm like Denise, I've been impressed with, once again, how creative everybody is about using these unique qualities in different parts of the state to come up with pretty much economic drivers and projects that will help the areas around economically. I do think that everyone is being, I believe the governor and others are being careful right now because of the unknown still left with the pandemic. So I don't think that anybody's going to be handing out a lot of money to anybody right now, because I think that they are trying to be a little more careful than normal. And in a normal time, it's really hard to get money, like we were talking about, for anything. Lots of things are going unfunded that need to be funded. And I mean, for example, they're talking about, you know, all these tax cuts that are coming up. Well, we have to have some money to do some of the things that are important, I think, for Arkansas. But I do think that that this pandemic situation is going to affect funding for everything.
You know, at the beginning of the pandemic, we realized, I feared that, and some of it has come true, that we were going to see huge impacts both on our funding stream and our, but also on our constituency base. And the funding stream, certainly, because we're a small agency, our budget is really only about $2.3 million annually. It is not, and most of that is in grants. Certainly we worry about ourselves, but our operation itself is not very expensive. But the grants that we pass through help support an ecosystem. The good thing about Arkansas is that unlike the we are not the driver. We are not the main supporter of most of these arts organizations. There's an extreme amount of independence and flexibility among small organizations, sometimes more than large ones, like the Arkansas Arts Center. They've had their rounds of furloughs and reductions, certainly, as has the institutions in Northwest Arkansas, like Crystal Bridges. But I have seen statewide that a lot of resiliency in smaller arts organizations, local arts organizations, and a lot of adaptation. And certainly, as a staff, we here at your Arts Council, we have we went remote on the 20th of March. We had just had to cancel the Governor's Arts Awards, and which is kind of the high holy day for the year for us, and then leave the office. And we have, it's been a very transformative time, but I think that we've seen enough adaptation among our partners that we haven't seen that many arts organizations go under. It could still happen. We are only 7 months into this, but our grants that we provide, general operating support, which really funds almost pennies on the dollar of what is requested, but it helps our partners around the state, many of whom are represented here in our in this chat, that are doing the work. We've seen a lot of shift. There certainly have been a lot of involvement now with foundations. We're not planning, certainly as a state agency, as your state arts agency, we are not planning to do a pitch for an increase in our budget. but we are trying to make our budget go farther. And I know that our partners here, you know, as I look down the list here, I can name 3 or 4 people here that are, you know, have gone virtual and are doing the best that they can, and they're, you know, and they're still reaching a lot of people on less money. There is, in some cases, a benefit to doing virtual programs can be cheaper, but it's also, you have to work twice as hard to reach your audience. So we're all feeling the impact right now.
Well, and we've got a lot of those stories today for those of you who've tuned into some of the videos that have come out already. All day during Advocacy Day, we have about 40 videos that have actually been, it's content submitted from around the entire state, and everything's coming out in different categories. Our Arts Means Futures, which is about education and young people, came out earlier today. And then we also are talking about communication and wellness and community, and then Arts Means Business and the creative economy. So as you look through those videos, you'll hear some of these stories. We have some arts organizations who just told their story of why, you know, how they're able to stay open and stay alive during the pandemic. And I think that it really speaks to the importance of creative thinking and problem solving, that the arts, we're not going down without a fight, and we're probably just not going down. You know, we're all working hard. And I really appreciate what you said, Representative Garner, about the arts and the culture and who we are in Arkansas. And even though we do need to invest in making sure that people are healthy and survive, but acknowledging how important it is that who we are as a state also survives this. And I think everybody on this, you know, in this meeting, and everyone who's contributed today and beyond, you know, we've all taken that on in our own small ways to make sure that our culture and our community survives. So, you know, I appreciate that that's being seen. So a little bit back to funding, we do have a question, and I don't know if this is going to be a little too nuts and bolts to get you guys right here, but Laura Grimes was asking, how does state arts funding compare to funding for other sectors that contribute a similar amount to our state economy? Do you feel that it's proportional? And she says, for instance, nationally, the arts contribute significantly more to the GDP than transportation, but airlines receive a $50 billion in pandemic assistance, and the arts has never seen that level of federal support. So, you know, how do you feel that sort of investment in and benefit out is proportionately across the sectors in the state?
I mean, I think that's true, and I do think it's unbalanced, and I think we've got to do a better job, all of us, in pointing that out. I don't think everyone probably knows those things, and what matters, I know here at the legislature, is data and proof that, you know, for what's going on. And once you have that, it makes the job a lot easier, as passing bills or asking for money or whatever it is. So I think it's super important that we are all doing our job in making sure that the public knows those figures. It's very unfair.
I
Well,
agree.
I brought up, kind of have dueling computers in here, but I did bring up our, some of the other data that we had collected this last year. And like I mentioned earlier, arts and cultural production was $2.9 billion for the state of Arkansas. And that's 2.4% of state added value. So, you know, 2.4% of what's going on in the economy comes from arts and cultural production. And that's a pretty big percentage, when a lot of times, you know, the arts is implied that it's almost like the extra thing. People think of the arts as the hobby or the luxury, when really it's very much a part of our economy. And so one of the things that also came out of our studies was that the arts and cultural value segment added to the Arkansas economy grew by 9.6% by between 2013 and 17, but compared to GDP overall in the state was only 8%. So that shows that there's a significant percentage of growth specifically in the arts and cultural sector. And, you know, we talked a little bit about that earlier with different projects going on around the state. And I think we can all speak to how exciting it is to not only see the museums and really amazing museum expansion going on, but, you know, between murals and public art and you know, Patrick speaking to not necessarily having a growth in funding, but there are foundations, there are private funders who are seeing this and they want to see it more in their communities. And I know we have some people that I wish would speak up on the call that I know have some really great projects going on in their communities as well. And one of the things, you guys in the audience, even if you just want to share what's going on in your community, because as representatives, I'm sure you definitely want to know what's going on in the state, but you're keenly aware of what goes on in your region. And so you know, we've got great projects going on in all districts in the state, you know, in Fort Smith and El Dorado, Texarkana. We often hear about Little Rock, Hot Springs in Northwest Arkansas, but there are some good things going on elsewhere in the state. So, you know,
all you have to do is look at those areas. I mean, just to watch El Dorado and what's happened since the district has been opened there, or certainly anybody who's been in Northwest Arkansas in the last 10 years has watched a major change in what's happening in the whole region, not just Bentonville because of Crystal Bridges. But I happened to bring my husband through. He grew up in North Little Rock, and I happened to bring my husband through as we were going to the Capitol, and we drove through our agenda. And, you know, just he was amazed because we see it changing so frequently that I don't think about it that much. But oh my gosh, the difference between what he saw 10 years ago even and what's happened now is just amazing. So there's truth to if you build it, they will come. And I do think that the arts in a variety of forms, one of the things that's built up Northwest Arkansas in my region is the Roots Fest. And it is cultural. It's food and music and art all together. And it's amazing. We get last year we had somebody from every state, and we had international visitors. So it's just amazing. And that is Ozark Mountain music and Ozark food, locally grown food. And so it's just I just see that happening all over the state. And I think we have a real opportunity. We're going to have to think. COVID has forced us to think about things differently, but I do think we'll get beyond it. Unfortunately, the arts. I saw the article, an article in Americans for the Arts that talked about the arts being the first to close and the last to open. And unfortunately, we tend to think of the arts that way, but I'm telling you, as my sister is trying to teach her 7th graders, if she didn't have fun video art and if she wasn't dancing around the room and those kinds of things, she would not keep their attention. So the arts are so important in so many different ways. But I do think it's an opportunity for us to rethink about what Arkansas is, who we are, and how we can showcase that.
I think the arts really do intersect. You know, there are so many of the challenges we're facing right now intersect with the arts. Certainly, you know, what our kids have undergone and being, you know, having schools closed and now in some cases having to attend virtually. The challenge. You know, in Arkansas, we've had certainly the Thea Foundation, A+ Arkansas, have been working on integration, concepts of bringing art techniques and philosophy into other parts of the curriculum. And You know, when you introduce that in a virtual setting, it has great potential and great challenges, and certainly that is something that we could, you know, we as the Arts Council, you know, with our grant making, will be looking at in the coming year to see how our recipients who've traditionally done in-person programs will deal with that in their new grant application for you know, how to continue incorporating arts into educational programs. But it's a huge challenge. It's a huge opportunity for growth, and we're excited about developing that. So.
Well,
Well,
and
and I can't see everybody that's on the call, but I have seen how the arts have affected those folks who have not been included for a variety of reasons, and for those who are really dealing with mental health, whether that's cancer patients or veterans. And so I'm hoping that there's programs out there, or there's ways that you guys can get in touch with us for those kinds of things. I will say that I think funding and policy is easier when you have a specific program, or you know, it may be difficult to get a penny tax for the arts, but it might not be difficult as we study suicide in veterans to get something similar, Margaret, to the program in LA, the dance program for veterans, or something like that. I mean, there may be some ways to get some of these programs, some of those kinds of programs funded, or policy enabling those things to happen in schools or in facilities that or organizations that work with mentally disabled, or physically or emotionally, for that matter. But anyway, I do think it's easier to raise money and get specific policy when you have programs, or when you have a common goal that we can get out there.
You know, my conversations when I came here to this agency and began to engage with the leadership at Arkansans for the Arts, which is, you know, is a growing and a growing nonprofit statewide partner, which we need to be, you know, the arts need that balance between the nonprofit advocacy and a state agency. And I have spent a lot of time talking to them about, you know, us figuring out, this is where I, as a state agency, you know, partially federally funded, but also state funded, this is where you know, this is the line where I stop and you start. And so, you know, certainly in conversations like this, that partnership is growing, and we're, you know, getting used to it. But speaking as someone who, yes, you know, I spent, I guess it turned out to be about 12 years, 2 different tenures at legislative research, working very closely in the legislative process. And, you know, I think it's very important that that people in Arkansas, the art organizations, and also artists understand how the legislature works, how their voice is heard, and certainly how you know, they can, you know, how they intersect with policy, and you know, you all, you know, in Arkansas, it's easier to talk to your legislator than it is, say, in New York State or California. But this is where the rubber meets the road in terms of having access to the legislative process. And if you'll bear with me, Aaron, I'm gonna do a little bit of a plug here, but or just you know, I realize, I recognize, I know that caucuses are a delicate subject, the legislature, with the legislative council especially. I was there when they set all the rules on what you could and couldn't do with a caucus. And but I do know that caucus that doesn't meet is very hard to it's hard to to get your best get the most out of a caucus if it doesn't meet. And so certainly if you all met during the regular session or there during the fiscal session, even if you met once a year, it would put, certainly you're gonna I'm going to assume you're going to want to hear from me, from your state arts agency, and also from other leaders in the field. And that is, if you were doing that in the spring of every year, that would be a good time to start having these conversations about, what are the challenges, what are the opportunities, and where do where does the members of the Arts Caucus, what are their interests in that? And so that's having come out of that, having come out of that field, I thought I'd interject that.
Well, and I'm hoping, moving forward, that we'll be able to do more of these things. I mean, I know, again, COVID has sort of made everything weird for everyone, especially with meeting, but both of you participated in town halls, and we've had several of our Arts Caucus members participate in our in-person and virtual town halls around the state. And for those of you who've not been to one of our town halls, we'll be starting them again next year, and we'll do one in each district, so we can kind of be targeted with the conversation. But we want to make sure that because we have board members all across the state, we can be a little bit more of that conduit as well, and sort of collect information, collect data, anecdotal information, and funnel it to you guys, in kind of more concise, groups of information or in events. And we have in the chat, I won't read all of it, but Talisha Richardson from 64-6 downtown in Fort Smith gave a shout out, and then also Jennifer Unger at Track talking about how they're kind of changing some of their programming. And if you could tell us a little bit about how important that kind of information is. Obviously data is, because it's a lot easier, I know, to have conversations with maybe people who don't get the arts when you're talking about dollars, or you're talking about lives changed in, you talked a little bit about health and mental health. And but what is the balance as we bring information to you, those hard numbers? We all have to do that when we report to grants. They want percentages and outputs and outcomes, but also, these stories, what is the balance? What is it that you guys, want and need from us, so we can make sure that we give you the best information?
Yeah, I think both are important, because I've also seen minds changed up here when you pack a committee room with people with real stories about ways their lives have been changed, which illustrates how important programs are, how important whatever the issue is for people. That and still letter writing, emailing, calling, all of those things are still super important. I mean, that does get legislators' attention. The thing that they don't worry about is if they're not hearing about it, they're not worried about it. If they're hearing about it some way, then they are. But I still think it's very effective, and much harder during this time of COVID to pack a committee room. But even during this time, during this session, you're still going to be allowed to come up here and be a witness for or against a bill or anything. That's still going to happen for the public, and you can watch all of this stuff live streaming. But I believe if you have evidence plus the story, then you've got, that's the most positive thing that can happen.
I do think that COVID has kept more people at home, so that we do have an opportunity to do some Zoom meetings. And if we could, since we can't be there with Aaron and Patrick and even Margaret with Mid-America, if we could have a monthly meeting where we're talking about what's happening in El Dorado, what's happening in Texarkana. You know, one of the things that the National Museum for Women in the Arts does is meet, and Mid-America does the same thing, is that we meet in the region once a year. And so we meet in a different region so that we actually see and experience. And obviously that's the best way to do that. But if we can't do it in person, then we certainly can do it. I'd love to see I haven't been to Texarkana. I'd love to see what's happening there. You know, and unexpected has made a difference all over the state. I'd love to see, you know, what the unexpected is, what's happening in Fort Smith, but also what's happening because of that in Fayetteville and wherever else. I know murals are going up everywhere, but that might be an opportunity to get people together, and then to start with a program discussing something that's going on, MAD or something that's going on in the state, and then meet to talk about the needs. You know, legislators are like everybody else. You got to entice them to get there, and we can't do that with food, but we can do it with, you know, we can do it with showing off areas of the state. And I think each legislator would be excited to show off their state, and they would be excited to see what's going on in the rest of the state. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. We can copy what Texarkana is doing, or Fort Smith, or El Dorado, or Helena, or wherever.
Well, and how great would it be to have those concentrated arts moments and communities all over the state?
Yeah.
And we're seeing it happen. We are seeing it happen, and it's exciting. But, you know, it is frustrating on one end to not be able to travel. But, you know, you mentioned Margaret. If we were doing this in person, we probably would not have a laptop with Margaret at the end of the table from Kansas City.
Right.
See? And so there's something that's kind of lovely about being a little equitable with our communication and being able to reach a little bit further as well, and have some people here. So I definitely think we're making the best of it, and it's appreciated. We have some more comments, and they're running off my page already. But definitely you guys keep an eye on the chat, and we'll save this chat as well. People are sharing links to different articles of things that are going on in their communities, and some comments about what's happening. And then we've had a couple of comments about technology, and we've got about 10 minutes left. So we actually, no, it's about time. We'll end on this one. But the conversations around broadband and technology, that's huge right now, because kids are at home, and there are kids that cannot go to school because they don't have access, and that has brought the conversation up to the forefront. But even with the arts, it's incredibly difficult to get our content out. It's difficult for people to access even just YouTube unless they have a data plan on their phone that they can afford to pull it in. And so, you know, maybe just kind of to end a little bit of an update on what those conversations are at the Capitol, and where we are, and even if the arts are part of that conversation.
Yeah, I believe that the governor, it's a priority with him with broadband. I believe that it's a bipartisan effort, which is always good. I know our Legislative Black Caucus has been very instrumental in working with minority communities, especially to make sure that broadband is going to reach them. And of course, everybody's really concerned about some of the technology broadband deserts we have in Arkansas, where, you know, I was shocked. I was out riding bikes and camping one weekend, and it was miles and miles and miles before you could get a phone signal anywhere. It was kind of shocking to me, but in this day and time. But we have a lot of those in Arkansas. We have a lot of those areas in rural areas, and even here in the city, you know, we have kids that have to go to McDonald's to log on to their tablets and things for school when they do virtual. So I believe that all of those things are very important, and it goes across the arts, education, public safety. I mean, there's so many areas that works across. I think that's one thing that we have going for us. I do think that's a priority here in the state right now.
Mostly it's the agencies that are working together to try to make sure, but they're geofencing. They're trying to make sure that we're getting the services that we need all over the state. They're bringing the information to us, and then we'll go from there. But they're really the ones that are doing the work. They're comparing, which school district and what companies are servicing, all those kinds of things. But I agree with Tippy. They're all of the agencies are looking. Everybody's affected by broadband, so every single agency is looking at broadband and how it affects their agency. And I can't imagine that if there's anywhere close to money being available, that's not a top priority. So it's a bipartisan issue, and everybody wants broadband. So I don't think if there's money there, it will go to broadband. We'll find it.
That's good to hear. Okay, so I've now kept everyone 3 minutes over. I personally want to say thank you again to everybody who's here. Thank you, Representative Garner and Representative McCullough. We're going to let you guys get to your lunch break so you can get back to the budgets and the business of running our state. Thank you, Margaret, for coming from Kansas City. Yeah, we've been recording this, so we will have this information available at a later date as well, but we're really grateful for everyone that took their time midday. Keep an eye on our YouTube channel. We've got videos coming out. Representative Garner, when you were talking about wanting to know what's going on around the state, it's there. It's coming out all day in those videos. So definitely when you get a moment. And if you guys get a chance, join us at 4:30 with, we'll have live interviews with Congressman Hill and Senator Elliott talking about the creative economy in Arkansas. So again, thank you for joining us for Arts Advocacy Day, and have a good afternoon. We'll see you soon.
Thank you, guys.
Bye guys, thank you.